Look, I'll tell you right now, if you want to know something, if you like to eat a lot, you eat wholesome, natural food. One ingredient is what you do, and it's the things we put on the food are the problem. But that's all the synthetic stuff and the crime of they should be put in jail. They should at least have, they advertise to our kids in the supermarket, the colorful packaging, they should at least have them put a skull and crossbones on it. Something like they do with cigarettes. Telling people how crazy it is. No, they have it all advertised all over the place. It's poison. It's creating all the diseases and all the problems in our life. And food is also amazingly healing. When you eat the right food, even some of these diseases, and I have some videos I've done where I've showed that I was on all these medications and had all of these problems. They all went away on 0 medications now. And again, I'm not a young guy. When we have this change in thinking and the whole thing and the idea with the food and the healing of the greens. And you know what I do? I don't bring greens like I say. I have in the refrigerator. Broccoli tastes amazing, right? All of these greens and broccoli, kale, all greens, lettuce, and it's amazing healing power. There's no. The other thing is there's no vitamins. Have a few ingredients in them that you buy in the store. So, this in A, B, C, with all the different vitamins, but greens and those foods and healthy foods have what's called thousands of what's called micronutrients, all of these vitamins in them. And it's healing. People who had actually blockages in their system, the heart system, all of this, they realize now that it becomes healed by the food. But the thing that got us sick in the first place was the food. The way we know is in our country, the United States anyway. I know there's people here from all over the world, but here there's a lot of diseases. And much more than other countries, all of those major diseases. But also in the other countries they didn't have them, but now they have the same type of diet, the fast food diet or the crazy diet. So it's called the standard American diet is SAD for sad, or modern American diet is MAD, MAD. But we could look at in other parts of the world, they didn't have, say, type 2 diabetes or heart disease, and all of a sudden now cancers, even all of these things that are attributed to the food. You just have to look around. You don't need any major research. They have what's called the blue zones where people eat healthy. And they live to 100 or more, in a lot of cases. So we have it's just like cigarette smoking in the 50s, right? They finally came out and, it's big corporations. They control, and they finally said, in the 1960s it's bad for you. But before that, medical people going on the TV and advertising it, saying it's good for your throat, right? So these things, we have to process food more than one ingredient. Well, it's 3 times the calories. So eat unprocessed food. You could eat all you want, pretty much. I challenge people, right? Especially if you have a lot of extra weight on you. But it's again, the remorse, shame, and guilt. It's not about where you are or what you ate last night or this morning. Because a lot of times you say, well, go back to the first day if you're not abstinent. Start your count all over again. No, we're in eternal presence with God. I'm not going to resent what I did yesterday. I'm not going to resent to be upset about any of my addictions, and then I could get centered. But when we're in self-centered fear and we're fearful of what we did or could have, should have, would have done, or I always say planning the past, regretting the future. But we have, prayer and meditation. But we have the gift of this. Look, there's a lot of philosophies now where they talk about being in the present. Meditating. If you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes, right? Be in the present. That drives me crazy, right? It's not bad meditation, and really it's amazing what the healing, restorative power of that. But we also have the grace. We have, prayer. We can get, the faith. Faith is amazing. It's all has to do with perception. If some people think in life, that like even they accept their own death. When we start to accept and see things, the truth will set you free. Then it takes care of all that. I don't have to go through the day anymore. I just put myself in the hands of a higher consciousness or God, and then my life goes straight. When I don't, it goes off the rails because I try to take control. Like I say, I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am for my second. So when I get centered, even if we'll go back to the food, if I say binge or have a problem, then I just get centered. Because the biggest problem I talked about is remorse, shame, and guilt. So here's something I texted somebody that came to my mind. Keep in mind to celebrate your binges, also not fear them. Celebrate in your failings and understand that. That's it. We look at things. We're not perfect. Progress, not perfection. Then we get back centered and we can review our day and always be centered, be in fit spiritual condition. As soon as I get upset, I could talk about anxiety and depression, the same thing. But everything about life is related to our food, and our food is related to everything else in our life. But as soon as I look at remorse, look at the past, or fear of the future, or resent. I love the phrase that somebody once told me. I spend my day resenting the future, right? So, regretting the future. It was regretting the future, right? Regretting the future was the phrase. How about planning the past? I spend my day planning the past. So when you think of those things, how crazy it is. But the same with the food. Enjoy everything. It's like this. When we want to have perfection, we fail. Like if somebody's on a surfboard is a good example, or any sport. But if they try to figure out how they're going to do it, they just will fall over, right? So the whole thing is to go with the ups and the downs, like on a wave, and just manipulate that way and not get into and figure that's part of your day. It's like anything in life. If you have a business or you're at a job, you have your ups and downs. But it's the way, I always say this. It's not so much what we did, whether we anorexic, bulimic, or binged on food. It's not so much what we did, but how we react to it. Again, anything in our lives. It's not so much what I said to somebody or I failed at something, it's my reaction to it. Because they say very successful people fail 10 times, right? And then, or 9 times in the one time that they're successful. But what we do is we might be on, like I was on a strict diet for a year, it was called the gray sheet. And the one day after a year that I had a bad night, I went back and I went off it for quite a long time. So what we need is a design for living, a perception change. But this relates to everything in our lives. It's all perception. What we see, 10 people could be in a room and all have 10 different opinions about what happened. But we can have that. The real source of all of this is in here. We can't get out of a diet book. We can't get out of these diets. We can't get it out of people telling us how to live life or what to do and react to people and situations. When we get centered, we'll know. We'll have that love, patience, and tolerance. We were meant to be that way. But when we get involved and we use the ego, easing God out, that's the defects of character come in. And when we look at the 9th and 10th step promises, that's exactly what they said. But also, I thought of something else I wanted to mention. Roland Hazard on page 27. At that time, Freud with the psychoanalysis, right? And at that time his student was Dr. Jung. So Roland Hazard was from a rich family in New York, up in upstate New York, and he went over there, all the way over to Europe, which in those days, wasn't easy to get over there. And then he saw Dr. Jung, and then he said in here on page 27, he knew the mainsprings of how the mind worked. He had it all figured out. He analyzed it, like a lot of us do when we read these books and how to self-help books. I had on diets and everything. I had tons of books trying to figure it out. But I'm crazy, so how can a crazy person figure it out, right? My attitude towards food is insane, so I'm going to go figure something out. Or my attitude I had self-centered fear towards situations and people, so I was going to figure out what I was going to say or do, or, in life. But we can get centered. And so what happened was, he came home, drank, he went all the way back to Dr. Jung, and Dr. Jung said, no, you're the hopeless. We have in here with a real alcoholic. We have the moderate, the hard drinker. If you're the real food addict, Dr. Jung said there's no hope for you. So anybody listening here, there's really, if you go to all of these big corporations, these food diet corporations, if you go try to read all of these books or go to speak to people who are going to tell you exactly what and when to eat, there's absolutely no hope for you. But Dr. Jung said there is one hope, and he's seen it in people. Perception change. He said that spiritual awakening. Throughout the book it says, and you know what? 100 years later almost, or it's 80 years later, still has scientists, we went to the moon, can't figure it out. There's only one solution, it tells us in the book. We have an opportunity here to have God's gift in thinking, the perception change, design for living. There's the difference, a spiritual awakening where we don't have to try anymore, where we enjoy God's gift to this earth, and we don't want the poisons. That's a perception. The other way is trying to control it. Anything in life, it doesn't work. That's through self-will.